Hello. In 1625, Anne Harrison was born in the City of London. Her birth was registered at St Olave Hart Street, a church close to Billingsgate, and this was no accident because also close to Billingsgate was a customs house, and Anne's father, Sir John Harrison, was the Commissioner for Customs in the city. He was an important man in the city and a rich one because the family also owned a fine estate in Hertfordshire, Balls Park. As a young girl, Anne could have only looked forward to a life of ease and luxury, but this was not to be the case. By her teens, the Harrison family were in trouble. The whole country was slipping inexorably into civil war, and Sir John was a royalist. He supported Charles I. By the time the war did actually break out in 1642, Anne's family had suffered a near total reversal of fortune. John had lent nearly all his money to the king. Their fine house in Hertfordshire had been ransacked and looted, and they wouldn't have been very welcome in the firmly parliamentarian City of London. Instead, they follow the king to Oxford, where he sets up his alternative court. So poor are they that they're staying in one room above a baker's and eating one meal a day. But the whole period isn't a complete disaster for Anne, because she meets and falls in love with her second cousin, Sir Richard Fanshawe. Now, it's the Civil War that indicates the strength of character of this young woman, because while Sir Richard is following the troops around the country, Anne crisscrosses the country trying to raise funds. And the country is a very dangerous place. There's famine, anarchy, and quite a few robbers on the roads. She's trying to raise money for the royalist cause, but the cause is lost in 1649 along with King Charles I's head, and the couple have to go into partial exile. They travel around Europe as political refugees, and Anne does have many adventures during this period. But the one I enjoy reading about is what happened to the couple when they were trying to travel to Spain. Their ship is stopped close to the Straits of Gibraltar by one of the most terrifying things a traveller could encounter during the period, a Barbary pirate ship in full sail. Well, Anne is promptly bundled downstairs and locked in her cabin for her own good, so that she doesn't become hysterical, so that she's safe. Well, the indomitable Anne is having none of this. She spent years by her husband's side. She bribes a cabin boy, puts on his clothes, and rejoins her husband on the upper deck to support him in whatever might happen. Fortunately for the couple, for whatever reason, the pirates did not attack, and they did make it to Spain. It was only in 1660 that Anne's fortunes really improved, because then Charles II was able to return to England and take his throne. Now, you might imagine that life could have come a little bit more easy and settled for Anne, but this wasn't the case. But Charles II decided to send Sir Richard to Portugal to become ambassador, and Anne accompanied him. Richard Fanshawe organised the marriage between Charles II and Catherine of Braganza. Once this was done, the family moved on yet again, this time to Spain, where Richard became ambassador to the Spanish king. And the family remained there until 1666, when Richard died. A heartbroken Anne returned to England, but not to the City of London, because during her passage it burnt to the ground during the Great Fire. Now, we know so much about Anne's remarkable life and a little bit about her personality because in 1676 she wrote a memoir, not her memoirs, but the memoirs of her late husband. These were published in the 1700s and have been in print ever since because they're such a valuable original historic source, and they are well written. But it's another book written and compiled by Anne that's garnered more interest in recent years, and this is her receipt book. Now, well-to-do women kept receipt books as records of all the information they'd need for successful domestic life. Some of that information would have been passed down to them from their mothers and grandmothers. Now, Anne Fanshawe's receipt book is remarkable because she's remarkable. It contains recipes, including the first recipe in English for ice cream, or icy cream as Anne calls it. Now, I think she must have had a sweet tooth, because the book also contains probably the first recipe in English for hot chocolate, including a charming little doodle of a chocolate pot. She's something of a proto-Elizabeth David, because the book contains Mediterranean recipes, including one for that great Spanish staple, sangria. Now, the book also contains medicines and cures. Anne's recipe for curing scurvy might have been quite effective. It's absolutely jam-packed with vitamin C. Her recipe for curing smallpox, less so, because we know she lost at least one of her small children to the disease during her travels. And that brings me on to another astounding thing about Anne Fanshawe. She was almost constantly pregnant and actually gave birth to at least 15 children. She also had several miscarriages, including miscarrying male triplets towards the end of term. Now, sadly, only 5 of Anne's children survived to adulthood, and she herself died aged 55 in 1680. But thanks to her and her receipt book, we know so much more about the domestic lives of women during this period. Now, next week, I'm going to talk about another woman who was a domestic. Thank you so much for listening. Take care.